Hello, my AP US History students. Hope everybody is doing well. Just going to do a quick video recap for your Unit 5 quiz, which will be in class on Monday. Unit 5 concepts as a whole really deal with manifest destiny, so US expansion, but for the most part, it deals with the Civil War. Essentially, as the United States continues to manifest our destiny, spread across from sea to shining sea, the Atlantic to the Pacific, the U.S. continually adds territory. Once we add that territory, we now need to decide if they are going to be slave or free states, which really leads us into the pre-Civil War compromises. So, and then the Civil War itself. So we'll start out with a little manifest destiny review, the territory the U.S. adds, and then we'll go on to some pre-Civil War stuff. So essentially, manifest destiny is this idea that it is the God-given right, specifically of white America, to spread to the entire continent, educating, providing democracy, and improving technology as they go. This idea is coined by a man named John O'Sullivan. That we have this right to manifest destiny. And now we can actually sort of do it because of the market revolution that we saw in Unit 4. There are now roads, there are railroads, there's telegraphs, increased education as a whole. So we now have the ability to move across the entire country, while also, providing people with opportunities. The East is becoming progressively more crowded as more immigrants move in, specifically from Europe. We see a large influx of, Germans moving to the Midwest, the Irish and the Italians settling in the bigger cities such as New York and Boston. Jobs are becoming much more scarce, and so is land. So people are moving further out west. Um, you know, there is one major argument against the United States expanding, and it has to do with the Know Nothing Party or the America Party. Essentially, if you know nothing about them, they really are not fans of the immigrant population. They feel like this adds like duty and responsibility to the Americans and like an extra job that we now have to sort of educate and take care of immigrant populations. So that's the Know Nothing Party. They're sort of the argument against manifesting our destiny. We have a whole bunch of land expansion in the time period, most of it occurring under James K. Polk, but we'll cover each of them. So specifically, the United States needs to form northern boundaries. We do this in Maine with the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, which, if you got that on your quiz, you would say it settles the border issue with Maine. You also get 5440 or fight in the Oregon Territory. Essentially, the United States, this happens in Texas as well, sends citizens into these disputed territories. And then once we outnumber the people that were living there, we, try to take the territory. So 5440 or fight out in Oregon. Essentially, James K. Polk gets the agreement with England to draw the border at the 49th parallel, splitting up the northern border now between the U.S. and Canada with those two ideas, the Webster-Ashburton Treaty and the 5440 or fight. Right. We also see the United States gain a incredibly large territory of land in the Southwest. This is due to annexing Texas, first and foremost. Texas has their own independence movement where they break apart from Mexico. The Alamo is like the big event that comes out of there. But essentially, the Texans, win their independence from Mexico and then ask to join the United States. When they do this, it's very much going to upset the U.S. and like the Mexican American relationship as a whole. Which is going to lead us to the Mexican-American War. Not much to note about this. The United States really does kick Mexico's butt. Essentially, the war lasting less than 2 years and us raising the flag over Mexico City, which gives us, the Mexican cession, which is New Mexico, Arizona, and California, also parts of like Nevada and Utah and stuff. So a big piece of land comes to the U.S. because of the Mexican-American War. Then lastly, our last two acquisitions in this time period are the the Mexican-American War gets settled in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. You remember that one from the video. So that's one that we should probably know. The Gadsden Purchase, which is going to be a small piece of land in between New Mexico and Arizona, that essentially allows us to build the Transcontinental Railroad. So we're able to buy that. And also Seward's Folly. We buy Alaska. Secretary of State William Seward, who's Secretary of State under Lincoln, acquires Alaska, to which people made fun of him for, acquiring this land because they thought it was just, giant frozen wasteland. But it turns out there's gold and oil and stuff. So now that we have all this new territory, we have to decide if it's going to become slave or free states. We can see that in the Wilmot Proviso, where essentially we're going to ask, or at least the union's going to ask, the North is going to ask if we could keep slavery out of these recently acquired areas. Um, to which they vote it down. They say no. But anyways, that's really going to spark a whole bunch of controversy, is whether this new territory acquired by the U.S. is going to be slave or free. We also see more and more people moving out west for the opportunity we spoke of before, but also because of the gold rush in California, which we're going to see leads to a higher population spike for California, to the point now where they are the most populated state of any state in the U.S. So that really covers Manifest Destiny. And everything that goes with that. We then also looked at pre-Civil War compromises. So there was a series of compromises that you needed to know, starting all the way back in the Constitution with the Three-Fifths Compromise and the Fugitive Slave Act, also the ending of the slave trade as a whole. So that's a compromise between the two sides. We also have the Missouri Compromise, or the Compromise of 1820, which says that no slave states can exist south of Missouri, and also adds Maine in as a free state. That ends pretty quickly because we have a gag rule in Congress, which basically says that we cannot talk about the issue of slavery or which states are going to be decided in Congress, so no discussion of the issue until we get to the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise of 1850 really dealing with like popular sovereignty and this idea that states should be able to vote for if they want to be free or slave. And this is going to lead to Bleeding Kansas, or the Kansas-Nebraska Act, where states are actually going to be able to vote for if they think that their state should be free or slave or not, right? Also, the major part of the Compromise of 1850 is the Fugitive Slave Act. The Fugitive Slave Act is a huge pain in the side for the Union, for the North. Essentially, southern states sending marshals up into the northern states to collect runaway slaves. That's going to be a huge controversial issue between the two groups in a whole bunch of different ways. We also saw things like the Liberator, abolitionist newspaper, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which really changes the idea of the argument of slavery from an economic argument to a moral one. Remember, most poor whites in the time period don't like slavery, but it's not for the reasons you think. It's because it does cut into their dollar. If you can pay somebody nothing, slave labor, you essentially don't get any increase in wages or salary for yourself. So that's why lots of poor white America is against slavery, and it has nothing to do with like moral issues at all. Anyways, continuing to lead up to some pre-Civil War stuff, we see the rise of the Republican Party. In the elections of 1852 and 1856, they're going to increase in popularity dramatically as the party that does not want to spread slavery or eliminate slavery after the Dred Scott case. Dred Scott versus Sandford, in which the Supreme Court of the United States states that black people in the United States, specifically slaves and freed slaves, are not people. Therefore, they cannot file lawsuits in federal court, because if you're not a person, you can't be a citizen of the country. So Dred Scott leads to a whole bunch of issues between the North and South. Basically, our president before Lincoln, James Buchanan, wants the Supreme Court to decide the issue of slavery. And clearly they have sort of left it up in the air here, or they're leaning slavery, which shows that we're going to need to fight a war to get over this thing and to fix the issue. We can also see increases in sectional tension in a whole bunch of different ways, such as the Charles Sumner fight in Congress and the Lincoln-Douglas debates, as well as John Brown, who leads the slave revolt. But anyways, that's all your material for Unit 5 quiz. Good luck.